In his secondary year teaching career, Dr. Diamadis has incorporated the teaching of ancient Assyrian history in his high school certificate New South Wales matriculation course. In his adult education activities, he includes a great deal of Assyrian content in his short courses at the Workers' Education Association, Sydney, looking at the Assyrian heritage in Iraq and Turkey from antiquity to the present. Please join me to welcome the Director of the Australian Institute for Holocaust and Genocide Studies at the University of Technology of Sydney, Dr. Panayiotis Diamadis.
Honoured guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'll keep the introductions short just because there's way too many and I don't want to insult anybody. First of all, thank you to the organisers for the invitation, once again to address you, and real thanks for putting me on after Braytel. Talk about showing me up. Not to mention Blair before that. It is a great honour not only to speak to you once again, but to speak after one of my own students. Blair, you made me very proud this evening. You made me very proud. You made me very proud with your project, which he's too humble to mention. He got 100% for it. No, I wasn't the only marker. There was another marker as well, just to make sure there's no bias there. On a darker note, though, we are talking about affirmation and denial. We have affirmation of the Assyrian genocide. We have some of the parliamentarians from New South Wales Parliament who affirmed, as in New South Wales Parliament, that the genocide, that the experience of the Assyrians in World War I and afterwards constitutes genocide. We also have denial right here, right now, in Australia, as well as worldwide. But affirmation and denial of what? Now, hopefully this will work. What did I just do? I just turned it off. Genocide is a term that was invented by this man, Raphael Lemkin. Jewish by religion, Polish by birth. Spent most of his life in the United States, but never lost his Polish accent. He studied the many cases to come up with the definition which the United Nations adopted in 1948 and which today is the only definition of genocide in international law. And this is the one that Blair referred to before. This is the only definition that exists in law, and this is what we mean when we say genocide. One of the cases that he looked at was Simele. And this is one of the reasons we are gathered here tonight, to commemorate the victims of Simele in 1933. This is Lemkin's own note from his archive. He was writing, when he passed away unexpectedly, he was writing a history of genocide. And one of the cases that he talks about is Simele. Other cases that he mentions in his writings, in his speeches, before I get to that, are the Greeks and the Armenians and a whole lot of others. What about them? Okay. The affirmation, the good point, the easy thing. I know it's way too small, but this is the actual motion moved by Reverend Nile 1st of May last year. And then a week later, the lower house moved a very similar motion, though slightly changed, I noticed. But we'll talk about that another time. The response was denial. Not an examination of history. Not an examination of opinion. Straight out, it didn't happen. Stop legislating history is the quote. You don't legislate history. We write it. We live it. This one sentence ago is history. It's happened. How we interpret it, how we interpret that event, this is also history. And this is what history extension is all about. History extension course, the history courses in our syllabus, be it ancient Assyria, Sennacherib, Ashurbanipal, all the list that Braytel went through. This is as much part of the New South Wales and soon to be the national syllabus as history extension is. This is affirmation. Again, from the ATMA's Facebook page. And the ATMA is on a campaign to block recognition in federal parliament of the 3 genocides of the indigenous peoples of Anatolia and Bet Nachren of Mesopotamia, modern day Iraq. They won't win. Can I tell you when this is going to happen? No, I'm not a prophet. It will happen. And in the next few years. Because the same evidence that we presented last year to the New South Wales Parliament, we are also presenting to the federal parliament. For political expediency at the moment, they're choosing not to touch it, as you heard from Foreign Minister Bishop's recent announcement. Well, we have no position. We do not accept it. It's not a position to get involved in historical disputes. As you heard from Blair, it's not a historical dispute. The dispute is what constitutes the history of it. Affirmation and denial. The affirmation is education. This is how we get affirmation. This is how we got to the point where we have parliaments in Australia, we have parliamentarians here this evening who after me will affirm that what happened was genocide. That what is happening now in Bet Nachren is genocide. When you have people being told, like we heard again from Braytel, convert or die, pay a dhimmi tax or leave. This is genocide. What is the world going to do about it? That's a different story. Hopefully a bit more than they did back in 1915, 1914, all the way through to the 1920s. What can we do here in Australia? And I'm pretty sure I've said this before. The Board of Studies. The education system is the key. We want Assyrian history taught. It doesn't need to be a separate subject. The Board of Studies already has it in the syllabus. History extension. You can do anything you want, any topic as long as it's history. I have Blair here this evening talking about Assyrian genocide. I have other students who did Rwanda, another student that did about the use of history in the dispute around a place called Artsakh, generally known as Nagorno-Karabakh. Education is the way forward. It is the key. I cannot stress that enough, not just because I'm a teacher. Education is not just about what is taught politically. It's not a political game. It's about how we, as a community, as an Australian community, remember these events. And as I've spoken a number of times in the past, we're talking about Australian history. In the song, I don't know how many of you noticed, there was some black and white footage in the background. The black and white footage looked familiar. I'm pretty sure, please correct me if I'm wrong, it was filmed by the Dunster Force in the summer of 1918, the northern summer of 1918. Of the Assyrian refugees that they escorted from the Urmi plain through the mountains of Iran to Bakuba. A lot of the descendants of those people they rescued are in here tonight. Some other ones who remained in Iraq are now the ones who are being kicked out from their homes again for the third time, at least in the last century, probably the fourth time. The Assyrian genocide, what is happening now in Assyria, is very much part of Australian history. And therefore, the best affirmation is to get non-Assyrians, non-Greeks, non-Armenians to talk about these issues, to write about these issues, whether it's a simple school project or something as high as federal parliament, which a number of people have done here who are here this evening. Yep. I will keep it short for a number of reasons. But I put up the slogan, the logo of AHEPA. Now, for most of you, have no idea what this is. I was at the state convention today. I'm the state secretary. I'm a man of many hats, as are a number of us in this room. We passed a couple of resolutions at our state conference. One that we will forward to the federal parliament is that we called on them, of course, to recognise that what is happening now in Iraq is genocide. What happened 100 years ago was genocide, and that the federal parliament, the least it can do is to adopt a motion accepting that yes, Australians played a role in rescuing people, they were witnesses, and we would like to commemorate. This is not about pointing fingers, it's about commemorating the past and stopping repetition in the future. The second resolution is going to Athens. It's going to the Parliament of the Hellenes, and it calls on them to recognise the Assyrian genocide as well. The Parliament in Athens has recognised, obviously, the Greek genocide and the Armenian genocide. And we are telling them, we and a number of others, you must complete the triangle. You cannot demand recognition of Greek or Armenian genocide without demanding recognition of the Assyrian genocide as well. During the school holidays, I had the great pleasure of being in Athens for a few days, and I spoke to the Armenian community there, and in the audience were some members of the very, very small Assyrian community in Athens. They asked me, because I said to them that I would be speaking here tonight, they asked me to send their best wishes. Some of them are recent refugees from Iraq and Syria. Some of them, like the president of the association there, his grandparents were survivors who settled in Athens. So they've been there since the 1920s. But they still, in his own words, they are still followers of Mardincha. That's how I knew which church they belonged to. It's kind of complicated for those who don't know. Wherever they are, Assyrians keep their distinctiveness as much as they can. This is not only a legacy of the genocide, this also keeps you alive. There is no Assyrian country. Unlike Armenia with all its problems, Greece with all its problems, we at least have a patch of dirt to call our people's national home. There is only one solution, I believe, to what is happening in Iraq, and that is an autonomous, at least autonomous, Assyrian region, at least inside of federal Iraq. There needs to be a place where Christians can be Christian in relative safety. How this is going to happen sounds like a pipe dream. How this is going to happen, I have my thoughts. Does it look realistic at the moment? No. But then again, in the 1880s, who thought that Israel would exist 70 years later? It's all a matter of planning, it's all a matter of education, pushing the message out there that we deserve it. We are the indigenous people of that territory, we deserve that piece of territory. I will leave you with that photograph, with representatives of the three communities who went to Parliament House and demanded, and we continue to demand, formal recognition by our parliamentarians, because when we go to Canberra we speak not as Greeks or Assyrians or Armenians, we speak as Australians. We want the history of our people, both in Europe or the Middle East and in Australia, recognised by our elected representatives. Basimaraba.
Thank you, Dr. Diamadis. We always appreciate your ongoing support and dedication to the Assyrian cause.